Edouard Michelin is here. He is the CEO of Michelin, the world's oldest tire manufacturer. For over 100 years, the Michelin Guide has announced Europe's top hotels and especially its top restaurants. It was announced that for the first time, the world-renowned Guide is coming right here to New York City. I am pleased to have him here to talk about this grand name in Europe. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
Your great-grandfather founded this company?
Yes, the company was founded in 1889 by my great-grandfather and his brother.
In what town?
It was in Clermont-Ferrand, in the center of France, from a unique situation where, as they were trying to turn around a small family company making farm equipment, an Englishman on a bicycle equipped with the first pneumatic tires got a flat and asked who could repair. And the Michelin brothers repaired the bicycle, tested the tires, and thought it was so fantastic, they needed to get into the tires.
So they got into the tire business. This is in 1889?
That's in 1889, yes.
Bicycle tires? Or?
It started with bicycle tires, and it was at the wake of the development of automotive. There was 5,000 cars in the world at the moment, and they got tremendously convinced that automotive, as long as they were using tires, would change the world. And therefore, they put all their energy in promoting automobile development and tires, and that's how they got into guides and maps at a time where there was really no support for traveling people.
So here's a tire manufacturer.
Yes.
In the center of France.
Yes.
Decides that it wants to create guides for where to stay and where to eat.
Yes.
You know, what's the logic of that?
The logic is
how does that sell tires?
It was not really to sell tires. It was the conviction that the mission of the company was to help people move. And that tires was the fundamental thing to help people move on the roads. And helping people to move required also, because this was a time where there was no road signalization. There was no maps. And the idea was we need to help people know where they want to go.
And so what would you do to make that decision? What would this, when the first Michelin Guide was what year?
It was in 1900, exactly.
So
11 years after the start of the company, yes.
They start creating these Michelin Guides.
Yes.
And how did they do it? They would just send somebody in and make an evaluation and then write it up?
The first one was not too much focused on restaurants, but mostly on garage, where to buy tires, and hotels. And they were collecting information and also relying very much on the reader to make his comments. And the first guide for a couple of years was given away. And one day my great-grandfather visiting a garage saw a car here to be repaired who was lifted up, held by a pile of guides. And he said, we spend a lot of efforts for this guide, we are going to start to sell it.
So how is it different today? I mean, tell me what's the extent of your penetration of the publishing market of guides for restaurants and hotels?
Obviously, the maps and guides activity, size-wise, is much smaller than our tire activity.
Of course.
You know. But in Europe, I would say we are very clear leader in this field, both for maps, road maps, both for what we call the green guide, like this one, which is about tourism, visiting, culture, and also for what we call the red guide, which is hotels and restaurants. And very soon, after the launch of the French red guide, we developed the Belgian red guide, and 50 years ago, an Italian one, and now we cover all Europe. We have 20 countries covered, 12 guides, 15,000 restaurants, and 30,000 hotels.
I know some people who are chefs in France. They live for a multi-star Michelin rating. Does it still have the same prestige and imperative for these chefs?
I think it's even growing more and more every year because it's
life and death for these people.
Yes, and this is a very heavy responsibility for us because we work not for the chef, we work for
the consumer,
for the reader, for those who go out and our mission is reliability. Reliability. But it's sure that some chef ask us, what would I need to do to get one more star?
Now, the ultimate is now what?
Three.
3 stars.
3, yeah.
And some restaurants have 3, and then they slip down to 2, and then they
Yes.
work their kitchen off to get back to 3.
Yes, exactly. So it's a stimulation, but it's also adrenaline.
How many
for the
3-star
chef.
restaurants in France?
In France, it's 26, and in total, in Europe, it's 50.
50.
50. So it would be 3 restaurants with 3 stars out of 1,000.
So how many, to get a 3-star, what do you have to do?
3-star means it's an exceptional place.
Service,
where we say
food.
it's worth the trip. But the star rates the food. What's in the plate?
Okay.
Which is about how great are the products, how well they are prepared, how much creativity, and also how much consistency over time. Because some chefs are very much ups and downs. That's why
Yeah. Now, why is that? What happens to them that they all of a sudden have a 3-star and then the next year they're 2-star? Does the food get worse? Do they lose their game, so to speak?
Yeah, I think there are various parameters for that, but in some cases it's, I don't know, they get bored, or they, you know, the success of a restaurant is certainly the genius of a chef, but also the strength of a team. Mm. And as soon as you start to have some change of people, and if the chemistry between people doesn't work well, you can rapidly start to have dishes which are not as perfectly prepared as they should be.
What do you think of the Zagat's Guide?
The Zagat Guide is, I think, a very interesting list of restaurants.
Now, it's based on a very different premise, is it not? It's based on a sampling of people who go to the restaurant.
Yes.
Not one
Yes.
person
Yes.
employed by Zagat's.
Yes, exactly. But I would more put it as a directory in which the evaluation is a feedback of consumers.
Yes.
In a given market. The big difference, and I think where we really want to bring value with the Michelin Guide, is that the evaluation is done by professional inspectors trained who eat out anonymously in restaurants, and and they can go repeatedly in restaurants.
What's the status of the tire business today?
The tire business is at the heart of everything that moves on the planet in terms of in terms of transportation of goods,
Yeah.
digging of minerals,
Yeah.
and the mining is booming, and also transporting people. So we are doing as well in a very competitive environment as the growth of the general
And
economy.
what's happening in the R&D of making tires? How are tires today, 2005, different from tires in 2000, 5 years ago?
Every year, our new products improve their overall performance, which is, what is it? It's safety related, it's mileage related, it's fuel efficiency related. Now there are some revolutions coming on board. Run flat tires. Run flat tires.
Run flat tires?
Yes, tires with electronics that will be able to read the road and talk to the car and say, the road is slippery, please slow down.
Like sensors in the tire.
Yes. Innovations also goes in the direction of gigantism. Our biggest tire is a 5 tons a piece. 5 tons. It
5
goes
tons, 5 tons.
Yes. It goes into giant mines, 6 per truck, 600 tons, the total weight of the truck with the payload.
Yeah.
And it's like a big elephant, 5 meters high.
Does Michelin, are you involved in Formula One racing?
Yes, we are.
With what team?
We are with 7 out of the 10 teams.
Ferrari included?
No, Ferrari not included.
Yeah.
And every year there are new teams joining us.
Right. Is that an experiment? Where do you learn about tires? From your own testing, or does...
in other words, tires have no end in themselves, even if some people say, my father stated one day that the car was an accessory of the tire, which is untrue. Yeah. So we learn very much from the car companies, but Formula One is a great laboratory for us. It provides a lot of adrenaline to our to our researcher, and at Michelin we always say we innovate more with adrenaline than with naphthalene.
Yeah, they do. The food today where is it changing the most, do you think? I mean, is France changing, or is it traditional? Is America changing, or is it different? I just came from London, and there are more better restaurants in London than there have ever been, in my judgment. You know, I mean, they're very much clearly influenced by America and the continent and their own creative chefs. And they also have lots of people who talk about food, like Nigella Lawson and Jamie and all those people. Tell me where food is changing.
I think we have say we are observers of food trends. We are not trend makers, but observers with the Michelin Guide. And I will say that 20, 30 years ago, there was a kind of French dominant influence in food, because most of the creativity around food and the chefs were coming from France, to the point where the top restaurants in New York were French-based a long time ago.
But they're not
anymore. Now it's not anymore the case, and the great news for me is that Japanese, Italian food, maybe Spanish food, used to have its excellence only in tradition, respect for tradition.
Right.
And over the last 10 years, they dramatically moved towards creativity also. Right. So it's excellence through tradition and creativity. And it means that there is a new trend around Japanese cuisine, around Italian cuisine, which is blending also with other influence, which makes, I think, the beginning of the new millenary absolutely exciting for the evolution of gastronomy. And we could talk also about molecular gastronomy.
What's that?
With trends that we can see with Ferran Adria in Spain, or Mr. Vera in France, or Mr. Blumenthal in England, who are using new techniques, new technology, to get closer to what we could call the genome of food.
To the genome of food.
Yes.
What's happening in China?
Now, China, I would say the top places right now in terms of restaurants is more a little bit offshore, what I would call Hong Kong. And obviously Singapore.
About Shanghai.
Singapore, where there are those many restaurants. But places like Shanghai are changing also very fast.
Okay, here is the new green guide.
This is a touristic guide. There are some selected, very small selection, but the guide that we are going to launch on the 15th of December will be a red one, of November, will be a red one.
For New York.
Will be purely dedicated for New York to hotel and restaurants. 500 restaurants, 50 hotels.
So, and probably Los Angeles is not far behind, and perhaps San Francisco, and then Chicago, and maybe Miami.
Right now, our inspectors are putting all their efforts on New York, but certainly later on we'll move to other large cities in North America.
Thank you for coming.
It's a pleasure
to have you here.
To visit you. Thank you.